In this presentation, I would like to highlight several keynotes on what is healthcare, what is the importance of healthcare, and actually there are several problems that healthcare is facing, not just here in the Philippines but in other countries as well. Why do we use Python? So I work at a company that uses Python for solving healthcare problems, and I want to discuss the reasons why we use Python and what are the specific problems that Python addresses in terms of the problems that we encounter in healthcare. How do we use Python in this, solving these challenges and problems? So there are several tools, libraries, and problem-solving approach that I want to show you. I want to briefly show you. How do I identify if what we're doing is effective? Because we need to benchmark. We need to know the metrics. We need to know if Python is really solving these problems, and what are we gonna do going forward. So, are there any startup founders here? None. Project managers? 1, 2. Product owners, product guys. Okay, so you're all developers and students. Okay, this can work. So this can also be catered for like CTOs, founders, and product owners. So let's start. Healthcare. So basic definition from Wikipedia: it's just the maintenance and improvement of health via prevention, diagnosis, and the treatment of disease. It includes like how you prevent the disease and what you do when you're actually ill, and what you do in the future when you get better, the maintenance. Why healthcare? What's the importance of healthcare? Healthcare is, it's the most important thing in our lives. If we're not healthy, then how can we do things? So essentially, it's one of the most neglected part of, our day-to-day living. Also, this industry needs a lot of innovations. Contrary to like popular beliefs, like not just here but in the Philippines, not just in the Philippines but in US, it's really hard to penetrate the market. Therefore, there are no innovations that are being developed. It's not as fast as other industries. Also, healthcare is really broad. There are a lot of specific niches that you can fill out, like fitness, medicine, or telehealth, all those stuff. It's also an integral part of the government. So for the Philippines, we have PhilHealth, which is not that good, sorry. In America, I think they're also improving their healthcare. First is, we need to discuss what's the current challenges in healthcare. As an industry, there are so many problems that we need to solve. Let's start by grouping the challenges into several use cases. One of the biggest challenge for healthcare is infrastructural overhaul, so it needs to change. A second one is monetary and operational cost. Healthcare is quite expensive. Who among here have medical providers like IntelliCare, Medicare, or something? Do you have those? Yes. Yes. How many are paying for those not provided by the company? None. You know how much your company is paying for your healthcare? It's really expensive. So, and the final one is personalized healthcare. More on this later, but mostly I think this is the one that you're seeing. Let's break down these challenges. So first is infrastructure overhaul. The main problem with healthcare is that information, or the data, is the king. You need to be able to deliver the information in a timely manner. You need to be able to put the information into the user's hands correctly. And then the second one is systems and standardization. Now, for example, I want to share this experience when I was hospitalized in Japan. I actually just went to the hospital just to try the hospital. And I paid like 8,000 pesos or something. That's a stupid move. So I went there. I asked for a checkup. And then what I ended up getting was this card. And if I go to the hospital again, I use that card. And then all my information is there. Yada yada. And then if we do the same process here in the Philippines, however, I go to St. Luke's, let's say, and then I have information there. I go back to some hospital, let's say in the province. What they usually do is, sir, what's your name? Okay, age, okay, weight. But you always give that information away. So why can't there be a standard system for healthcare? It's very difficult. Also, the reason is they have difference in procedures and protocols. One hospital might be using JSON, the other hospital might be using pen and paper. Okay, so how will you able to, sync those data together? And it's not just the data, it's also the operational protocols that differs. The final one for infrastructure problems is the data security and integrity. As a patient, I don't want my, information about my body being displayed online, accessible by lots of people because it violates my privacy. I feel violated if that's the case. So, how will you create a system that caters these challenges? The next one is monetary and operational cost of healthcare. Healthcare is expensive. I think for a premium account here in the Philippines, you will pay 60,000 per year for a premium healthcare account, while the ones that the employees give to the call centers, I think for several healthcare providers, are ranging from 20,000 to 30,000 per year. So it's very expensive. How can we minimize this? Now, there's a disjoint in the system, and it's because of the misaligned reward system. So, if I'm in healthcare and I reduce the cost of healthcare, then more people can avail of, that healthcare that I'm providing. But at the same time, those people will neglect their duties to be able to be more healthy because healthcare is cheap. It's like insurances. If you lower the cost of insurance, people will start abusing those insurances, and it's really hard to solve right now because it's paradoxical. Third one, personalized healthcare. Now, I think this is the one that you're currently seeing. Who among you people are using smartwatches? Okay, 1, 2, okay, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you're using smart watches. So, these are example of consumer applications that we use to gather the information, your information, to be able to create a detailed picture of how healthy you are. So this can be classified into individual or organizational, wherein big corporate companies hire this equipment and stuff to be able to monitor the health of their employees. That's what I think is popular in Japan. So I've learned that from my company. The next one is prevention mechanism. So there are applications which you can download that says, hey, you shouldn't eat that. That will make you fat. But of course, we ignore it. Look at me. And then, custom tracking and monitoring. How many of you have meal recording applications in your phone? Okay, so do you follow them? No? Sometimes? How many of you have the application when you run, when you strap your phone here in your elbow, and then after you run, what do you do? Do you look at it? Do you keep track of your progress? So it's very, I don't know, I don't do that. Maybe it's just me. And then the next one is accessible diagnosis. I think one startup in the Philippines started telehealth, and they produced a video in barrios like the Ifugao or secluded areas. They put up mini hospitals, and when people come in, it's just a dummy doctor with a telephone, so they can get free diagnosis, through that phone. And it's very important because accessible diagnosis is must be implemented here in the Philippines because we're quite scattered. So, now that we know the problems in healthcare, now that we know that there are several problems to be solved, why should I use Python? What's the benefit? Now, let's discuss first the strengths of Python. I'm sure you've heard this earlier before on the talks and stuff. Python is easy to learn, but it's really hard to fully grasp the concept. To be able to say that I'm an advanced Python developer, I think it takes several years of experience to do that. The large library and community support. So when you post something, people often respond. It's easy to search Stack Overflow, because we're all copy-paste developers. Don't deny it. So, yeah, fast prototyping. Python is, is dynamically typed, right? And then it's very easy to manipulate the data because you don't need to check the types of variables and just, you just create random stuff and then you don't care if the input is a string or whatever. It will quack. Yeah, that's duck typing. So if it quacks, something's wrong. Fourth one is the flexibility of use. How many of you use Python for web-based projects? Can you raise your hand? So you're using like what, Django, Flask, or Flask, yes. I'm biased. How many of you use Python in their work just for embedded systems like microcontrollers and stuff? Future. Continue with your future. That's good. How many just use it for scripts, like automating the boring stuff with Python? Yay. Okay, you're lazy. Should do more work. So another one is scalability. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there are several ways on how to scale codes nowadays. We have load balancers, we have all this fancy shiny cloud stuff, Amazon, Google Cloud. So it really contributes a lot with the scalability of Python. How do we solve these problems? And what characteristics of Python help solve these problems in healthcare? First and foremost, that I want to emphasize is that Python is really good for data processing or any other data-related stuff. When in terms of data, Python is king. Or if you're using R, okay, fine, R. But Python is king. Data delivery, there are lots of good libraries in Python that you can use to deliver the data in a timely manner, in the correct manner. Systems standardization, so Python supports multiple formatting. You can output as JSON or whatever you like. And then there's this new in Python 3.7. Anyone have read the release notes for 3.7? Yay! I'm the only one. Okay, it's just faster. So, it's also good for consumer applications. When you're building APIs, I'm sure that, you had this argument, hey, what data types do we use? Will this be string? Will this be int? What is this array or is this object? And data security and integrity. So, how many of you have used what the forms? No, you don't know what the forms? So, it's a Python library for forms. Okay, so what the forms? Yeah, it's good for data processing. That's why it can help solve these problems in healthcare. The next characteristic of Python is that it is very strong in terms of machine learning, pattern recognition, because of the libraries that are provided. I know I'm familiar. I know that you've seen a lot of libraries earlier. So if you've used them, good. If you've never used them, use them. Custom tracking and monitoring. Basically, this involves building an image of yourself with the data that you have. Sometimes we're surprised that the applications that we use know more about us than we know about them. You're browsing Facebook and then, there's a drone advertisement. I just watched a video of a drone. It's like, oh my God, the NSA is monitoring us. Don't, please. And then consumer applications. So consumer applications like for example, the one that we're building in our company, you input your meal and then we try to recommend meals based on your meal so that your lifestyle and your overall health will be better. So let's eat more foods. But it doesn't apply to Filipino because we're eat lechon and everything. So an accessible diagnosis. There are several chatbots nowadays. I think there are several startups in Manila that are trying to achieve that. So when you say, hey, I have a headache, and then brain cancer. Yeah, brain cancer. No. I have a headache, and then the bot will tell you what's the other symptoms. So this can be just a minor migraine or brain cancer. That's over exaggerated. So yeah, that's for strong ML and pattern recognition. We'll dig into the details of this later. I'm going to show you some tools and libraries that you can use and how you can use them. And this one, I think this one is the one that we're most familiar with, the Python web technologies. In terms of the difference in protocols that are being used, if the healthcare institutions and the stakeholders can just, let's just say, let's unite for the sake of humanity, doing Flask or doing Django can easily save us because we can build APIs. We can say that building this API will allow us to talk to each other. We don't even need to, we can apply blockchain even if we're just, we're too afraid of security. We can apply blockchain with how we communicate and interact with these kinds of healthcare institutions. So it's also for affordable healthcare because, as you might know, building technologies in Python, mostly the libraries are open source. Yeah, all hail open source. So support open source, guys. And it's very affordable in terms of like the maintenance and the cost because the community is contributing and pitching in. And I think that's the most important part. The community must always be involved. So, yeah, those are the problems that Python can solve. Now, question remains, how do we use Python in solving healthcare challenges? So I think I've shown you like there are several tools, there are several libraries, and problem-solving approach that we can take and we can use. So the first one, I'm going to start with mostly web technologies here, and I'm just going to share on how we use them in the problems that we encounter in the healthcare space. Is Flask. So how many here uses Flask? Flask, yes. Flask is a micro framework. You're familiar with the micro framework. If you're using PHP, there's Lumen. If you're using Node, there's Express, right? Or if you're using C, there's PyCon or something. I'm not too familiar with it. So the good thing about Flask or micro frameworks in general is that they're very good for prototyping. If you want to build a demo application or if you want to address like, I want to build a consumer application for healthcare or for all elderly, it's very fast to whip up something using these micro frameworks. They're very flexible. So I've had several chats with Django users. No offense, Django users. It's like, I'm using Django again. I don't need this in my app. Why is it here? Can I remove this? It's a bit bloated, but it's good in some cases. So Flask is flexible and it's really malleable. There's no defined project structure, by the way. If you're familiar with, if you're used to big frameworks such as Laravel or Django, which has like defined structures on how you will use them, Flask is pretty malleable. You can decide on how you can apply the blueprints. You can decide on how you want to load the database. Do you want to create a custom database? Do you want to use an ORM? So it's pretty much up to you. And I think it's very important because the technology that you're using should be flexible enough to cater your use case. It's easy to learn, right? Yeah, okay, so because there's a lot of tutorials, you can create a one-page app already if you're familiar with Python. And it can scale. It can definitely scale. That I can attest to because we've deployed several production-level Flask applications. And aside from the fact that it's easy to deploy, it's also able to handle like a good amount of requests in terms of when we're starting to test the features in live. So, of course, we have a framework and then we need ORM, or we need how to access the database. Wait, I have a question. This is a legit question because I really don't know the answers. Flask is like an alchemy tool, and then you have SQL Alchemy, and there are several Python libraries that are named after alchemy stuff. Do you know why? No, I'm asking. So I don't know. Okay. So it's just weird. Yeah, the battle thingy and stuff. SQL Alchemy. It's very powerful tool. It's a very powerful tool, ORM. How many of you have used this? Are you familiar with this? Okay? So, it's a very powerful tool in terms of accessing your database. It can cater so many drivers, not just MySQL. So the implementation is also quite fast relative to other languages ORM. So if you haven't tried this one, I suggest you try this because this is really good if you want to solve data warehousing problem. They have several drivers that you can attach to it. Ansible. So I know you're familiar with Ansible already, right? So from the earlier discussions, it's an automation tool. It's a task management tool. But the reason why it's so powerful is that it has this Python interface that allows you to, it's very intuitive in terms of what you want to do with your setup, not just in server maintenance, but also in task management and in being lazy, I want to automate this. So this is a crucial tool that I really suggest you learn. This tool is what, it's gonna make your lives a lot easier. So yeah, Ansible, and then Docker. So we use Docker. There's also a Docker API for Python. There are several porting. So we use this to build containers for our services. How many of you are familiar with microservices? Really? Okay. So microservices are really good because they're able to process, they're able to function and process data even in their small units of deployment. So Docker allows you to do that, and it's also easy for development. When you have different operating system and you want to test things out, so you can also use it as a virtual box or something. So I won't go deep, just check it out because it's not really that Python related. This one, hey, Jupyter Notebook. So how many of you knows the meaning of Jupyter? Okay, what's the meaning of Jupyter, sir? What's the meaning of Jupyter? What does this stand for? Yeah, it's R. Okay. What does this stand for? Yeah, Julia, Python, and the language who mustn't be named. Sorry, I hate R. So R. So I think the keynote speaker earlier this morning said that in a school they will try to implement all the lectures and stuff using Jupyter. And the reason is quite simple. Anyone of you who hasn't seen a Jupyter notebook yet?
No. I haven't seen a Jupyter.
You haven't seen a notebook yet? I don't have notebooks here, so sorry, because this is the other PC. But essentially, it's like a set of instructions or commands. You program the same way, like import, whatever, and then do your computations and stuff. But the main difference is that you can share the URL of that notebook. So it's like a scratch paper, but for research. So it's easy to share, it's easy to show your results. The results are easy to replicate. And this one right here, for example, you're presenting to a management level personnel. You can easily just use the Jupyter Notebook and they will understand. Because there's no actual code. It's very human readable. So if you haven't learned how to make this yet, I suggest this is your top priority that you should learn, because this will help you a lot, not just in solving healthcare problems or the challenges in healthcare, but in general. So we're gonna move on to the libraries that we're using. Familiar with OWS? Yes. Familiar with Boto? Or how many of you are using Google Cloud? 1, 2, Google Cloud, 3. OWS. So more OWS users than Google Cloud, as expected. So why? So basically, Boto is a library. It's very powerful. There's also a command line tool for it. You can do operations in your OWS environment just using this simple library here. So for example, S3, you can initialize an S3 connection, you can start an EC2, you can decommission an entire VPC just by this. So it's a powerful tool, and our main use case is we use this to be able to manipulate the data in and out storage such as S3. So using this, we're able to efficiently do that data transfer. The next library is, I think you've seen this earlier. Are you familiar with scikit-learn? What? Anyway. So, scikit-learn. Scikit-learn is a really good comprehensive machine learning library in Python. And the main advantage of scikit-learn over other library is that science, computer science, like the hardcore computer science PhD graduates, they contributed in making this library. Meaning, the implementations are so optimized. For example, when you do sorting, it uses quicksort. Like like not your usual merge sort. By default, it uses quicksort, which is a lot faster in most cases. So it's very optimized. And it handles your data really well, and it gives you the fastest result that you can get. So it's tested by a lot of science guys and research guys. So try it out. And the next one is pandas. Yay! Familiar with pandas? Up here. No, high five. So pandas is also it's also a bit related to data formatting, data structure library. It's very ideal for data analysis, and it's standardized. The important thing about pandas is that you're always assured that the data that it will output is very uniform. It's very clean. You don't have you can always count on it in terms of serializing the data properly. Because in Python, sometimes you encounter that if you convert some objects into JSON, there are some stuff that you cannot serialize. And you need to create a custom handler for serialization of those data, which is very tedious. I hate it. So pandas handles them accordingly. So try to look for it. It goes hand in hand with scikit-learn and other machine learning libraries. And of course, we need to be able to display the data. Familiar with matplotlib or Plotly? Anyone? Have you used it? So it's really good because it's really comprehensive. It's really easy to use, like what the previous keynote, like what she said. It's relatively easy. Even beginner can do it. So this is very comprehensive. You can display normal graph or charts. You can display the results of your advanced stuff like annealing or ANOVA and all those researchy stuff. But it's very helpful because when you present to the stakeholders, or when you try to solve or present it to healthcare institutions, you need to be able to display the data. And the best way to display the data is through charts. You need to show them those charts so they can understand the solutions to the problem that they're trying to solve. Okay, so this one, problem-solving approach, this is very broad. It's basically just the way on how you want to solve the problem, what kind of mindset do you have in solving the problem. So one of the first thing that I encounter or that I experience when building this healthcare application is object-oriented versus functional. How many of you are using object-oriented programming as a style of coding? Object-oriented people, raise your hand. Don't be shy. Okay, there's a lot. How many of you uses functional programming? Functional. Woo. No, it's I'm biased. So, object-oriented, of course, we declare objects. We have all sorts of stuff. Interfaces. There should be inheritance. Everything should be proper. It's like you need to clean the house and everything should be arranged accordingly. So, if there's an object called ball, you need to declare the ball. And then if there's an object like a person, you need to have a person, and you need to extend. You need to have child classes like a girl, a boy, and if it's a girl, maybe you have properties like age and all those stuff. So it's very in order. While functional programming, it's just functions. That's it. So everything must be immutable. So you must follow immutability, which very contradicting to object-oriented programming. So what we've learned through the development of when we're approaching healthcare problems, you actually need to balance both of it. By balance, I mean, object-oriented is quite slow. Let's be honest. Sorry guys. Functional programming is pretty straightforward. It's really fast, and it's ideal for processing data. So for example, when you have a data, let's say a text file, do you create an object called text file, and then there's a property there called rows, and then the rows, do you do that when you're just processing a text file? So you need to, it depends on what kind of problem are you solving. So when it comes to more data intensive processing, go functional, 100%. Functional all the way. It's very fast. And when you apply it with Python's threading module, it's lightning. It's really lightning. The speed is like the one that the keynote speaker talked about, 19 hours versus several minutes. It's true. I've seen use cases like that. I've seen use cases that even go for like 2 days. And you can compress it to just 5 minutes. So it's very true that you need to use functional approach. So for my style, in my opinion, I always apply a mix of both. It's very unconventional. It's not standard. It's ugly, but it gets the job done. And in terms of like trading off with speed, it's really crucial, because remember, when you're solving healthcare problems, data delivery and reproducing the data is the most crucial thing. So next one is architectural design. When you're approaching a healthcare problem, the first thing that you need to know is data is king. Okay? Healthcare problem, data is king. You need to always prioritize the data. So you must always ensure fast data delivery. When you're setting up your servers, your networks, what kinds of network are you using? Are you going to use a mesh network? Or are you going to use a Bitonic sorting network? So search for Bitonic sorting network. You must always put checks on security and data integrity. So for Amazon, there are several standards that you can follow. You can encrypt the data in S3, or if you have used Glacier, like the really cold storage data, you can encrypt the data even more and store it for a long periods of time. It must also be scalable, because to be able to deliver the data, if many users request the data, your applications need to scale. And you can scale it by applying load balancers and applying several techniques that you can find in your cloud providers. The next mindset is a buzzword, machine learning. A lot of people say, I do machine learning. Really? Who does machine learning here? I believe that guy. It's my CTO, by the way. So, yeah, he does machine learning. So, a lot of people usually say, I do machine learning. Oh, what do you do? I go through a set of files and search for a certain, string. Wow! That's data processing for you. And, any machine learning stuff, I sort lots of data and then I see the mean or the standard deviation. Wow, you should have taken statistics. Anyway, machine learning, the thing for machine learning is that it's ideal for large data sets. If your data set is 2 or 3, just jump off the building. Machine learning won't work. So there are several techniques like regression and other stuff. So you can derive patterns, like using regression, and classification, which is very helpful if, let's say, I want to classify if I'm fat, I'm super thin, or I'm not obese. So classification is very important if you like classifying if a person is healthy, what's the pattern, what's he eating, what's the nutritional value. So it's very important. There's also, like I showed you, lots of supported libraries for machine learning. scikit-learn, pandas, and the other libraries that you've learned from before. Now, next one is, I want to share this with you guys. This is what we're using. So, I think it's not known. It's very rare that you've heard of this. It's like when Erica said something like modeling something. So it's like, oh, buzzword. So, sparse modeling. The good thing about this, and I'm not an expert on this, by the way. I'm just fascinated by the idea, is that the learning approach for sparse modeling requires, very little amount of data. If you have like 20, 30 data sets, it can work. So, it's how can it work? So, compared to machine learning and deep learning, originally it was intended to use for image processing. If you search for it in the internet, there are lots of papers that indicates sparse modeling being associated with processing image. And I think we're able to apply it in classifications using different data, not just images. So this is really fascinating. I suggest you look at it, sparse modeling. I cannot share anymore because I'm not knowledgeable. I'm not that good, but I just want to throw it in so that you guys are aware that it exists. Yeah, so how do we identify if Python's really effective in these healthcare challenges? So this is more for like the product managers and product owners, project managers, but developers can learn as well. We must first understand the stakeholders. Aside from being data-driven, one must always know that healthcare startups are dependent on their stakeholders. Stakeholders are either the users or the healthcare institutions that you'll serve your application or your solutions with. So after data, you need to think of the stakeholders. So in order to know if your solution actually works, so if Python is actually effective, you must ask these questions. So first is the data delivery done on a timely manner? Is it fast? Can it show the data right away? Is the data secure? Because your customers and your a well-known hospital wouldn't want their data being hacked by anonymous and being ransomed for Bitcoin. The third one, I think, is very specific to healthcare because it has lots of specific niches, which is your solution simple and does it target a specific needs or specific niche? And the main reason about putting it here is that healthcare is not like any other industry that you can jump in, you can start a solution with, start an application with. It's very centered to how the actual stakeholders behave. You need to understand how the user, you need to build a complete picture of the user if you're building a consumer application. You need to understand the whole process of a health institution if you're building an application for a hospital, or if you're building an application for like a government clinic or something. So it needs to be simple because it will be used by everyone. If it's successful, it will be used by everyone. Healthcare is for everyone. That's why it needs to be simple. And the fourth one is, can your stakeholders identify and use the delivered data? So if I have a simple solution, I just log in and then I see all the data in there. That's very simple. But if I see the data, do I know what the data means? It's like you're putting nitrogen content or something like the nutritional values. Who even looks at nutritional values? We just eat, for God's sake. So if you put there that, hey, you're getting fat, don't eat anymore. Okay, I understand. What if you put there that calorie is more than 100 or something? Who cares? I like to eat. So for the development, however, there are several implications that you also need to consider. Is if you need to identify developing your solution using Python will not cost you technical liability or any technical debt. If it causes you technical debt, maybe it's not that good for you. So Python can easily be your choice of starting tech, but please identify if Python is good when you move towards the future. Maybe it's good for prototyping, but if your future projects will be affected, drop Python. Sorry, Python PH. Sorry. Next is, so you need to watch out for this. If it sacrifices speed and structure versus the delivery time. If adding new feature is difficult, then there must be a problem. If it's difficult to refactor, hello spaghetti codes. You're all familiar with that. And if it's difficult, if it has difficulty in connecting with outside interfaces such as APIs, so you need to watch out for this. If this raises a red flag, don't go with Python. So just, moving forward, this is the last two slides. So yeah, moving forward, just to generalize, healthcare. To be able to succeed in the healthcare space, it is not enough to build solutions like web app. These are disjoint solutions. You're just adding to the problem. Instead of building this disjoint solution, build a platform so that everyone can communicate. Build a platform so that everyone can collaborate. And it's gonna be more beneficial for everyone if you build a communication medium rather than promote your own, app or website. So lastly, by now you should have known that I'm trying to emphasize that for healthcare, data is king. So knowing this, healthcare solutions must evolve to cater the fast-growing need for data reliability and data delivery. The standardization of data format is also important because we need to communicate with each other because healthcare is an encompassing industry. And with this, Python can be more beneficial because, as you can know, the strengths of Python includes data processing, machine learning, and then you can transition the flexibility. So with the advances of data science and engineering, new approaches and techniques to solve complex data problems should be helpful in building a better healthcare system. The end. Tama ba? Okay, some resource. So, yeah, questions? So, hi, hello. Here's the mic.
You mentioned that you use Python in healthcare. Can you please mention at least a sample project that you've done?
Okay.
Okay.
Can I mention? So, I think we built, in our company, we have called the Hackerus Fit application. So, it's a project that mainly involves recording your meals. So, when you record your meals, we try to analyze the eating patterns and give you recommendation for what meal to eat next and give you instructions. So, let's say I eat a whole lechon for lunch. The app will shout. No, kidding. The app will self-destruct. No, I'm kidding. It will tell you, hey, that's not healthy. Maybe you should adjust your eating habits and stuff like that. And we do this, by using machine learning. So it's one of, I think it's one of the better use case that people can see. So yeah, does that answer your question? You can say Hackerus Fit if you want to. I don't want to advertise. You ask questions anyway. So any questions? Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's about your app.
But don't ask about the app. It's against the code of conduct.
Really?
Okay.
It's against the code of conduct.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Sure.
it's about your app. You mentioned that you can advise a person on what to eat next time so that they can be healthy.
Yep.
So, how do they input the food that they're eating? Are they going to upload a picture or
Yeah.
you getting readings from the wearables?
Yeah, good question. So, uploading a picture is what I want to tell you, but it's not. It's too advanced. So, right now there are a set of meals. Actually, here in the Philippines, there's also a set of meals, set of data that you can buy. I think there's data from Foodpanda or some other sources. So you can buy those, and depending on their data format, because I know the one that we're using in Japan has a bit of some data issues, but it's a bit standard. So there are ingredients list and there's a menu list. So that's how we know the food because it's localized. Now in the Philippines, we can get that data as well, and then we can use it to input the nutritional values. Because one meal, for example, you need to have the data for the actual meal, the name. I think there's also the ingredients. And to be able to perform analysis, you need to have the nutritional values and all those stuff. So it's a different thing here in the Philippines because of the regulation, but it's almost the same. But for classification of meal using images, there's also several libraries like that. You can try Google's imaging API. So at some point of degree, they're able to classify different types of pasta. Hey. So any more? That answers your question. So any more questions? Questions? Okay, we're good. Oh, okay. Which one? Ladies first. Ladies, sorry. Yep, there. It's usually at the bottom. No? Right here.
Hi, I actually have two questions. So the first one is, since you're coming from the healthcare industry, or you're engaged in the healthcare industry, do you have any idea about the status of how our country addresses these questions, or are we currently addressing the problems that you mentioned during your talk, or are we really far from going there?
Okay. I can't be specific because it might hurt some people, so I'm trying to be kind. But in general, there are several startups that are addressing this problem. So I think there are like several startups here in Makati, and the Ayala Health is an initiative. Like Ayala Health has an initiative of gathering startups with similar mindsets to improve health sector. There's also Open RMS, I think, for UP Manila. So, in terms of addressing the problem, yeah, they're having initiative, but in terms of uniting, no. Because they have different protocols. I mean, this guy wants to control the healthcare space in the Philippines, and UP Manila has their own initiative, like I think they imported the system from other countries. But yeah, they are trying to improve, but there are a lot of things that can be done to make it better, like uniting with, being standard with each other. So, yeah, you have another question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. The second question is, since I am actually from a semiconductor industry engineering company, and you're more focused on creating the software, the web applications, we're actually thinking of the IoT products that can be used to improve the healthcare situation. So, for example, the app that you created for the meals, do you have any other ideas about IoT applications that can be used in healthcare?
Okay, so first, for the meals and stuff, I think we connect to like wearables such as Google Fit. We can get data from Google Fit and what's the Apple thing? So Health Kit or something. Yeah, Apple. I don't use Apple, so yeah. So yeah, there's that features there. And in terms of like IoT, I believe there is a focus on that one in the initiative of UP Manila, wherein they use several IoT devices to monitor heart rate, insulin level, and all those stuff. They're also using IoT devices for prevention. Not just in the Philippines, by the way, but there's also, like, if you're reading tech releases, there is one the contact lens that says if you're gonna have high insulin or something. So there are several initiatives like that. And I think the good thing about that industry integration is that it hasn't been dominated yet. So if your company wants to get rich, just dominate it. Okay? So, okay. One more. How many more questions? Wala yung PyCon. Anyway, okay.
And so, when you deploy your machine learning code, are you using online learning? If yes, why? And if no, why?
Why not? No. Basically, for deploying machine learning codes, or I think it's also based on my experience. It's easier if we make it simple. We shouldn't use any kinds of third party. Is that a third party software? The one that you're referring? Open learning?
Online learning.
Online learning. So is that a third party software?
It's a type of adjusting your machine learning process.
I think you're. What's the term? The one that AlphaGo is using. So yeah, I think I'm familiar with that. It's what AlphaGo is using to beat everyone's So basically what he's trying to say is that when you deploy machine learning codes in the cloud or in production, the metrics will change most of the time. Right? Yes. So it depending on the situation, your machine learning code should adjust. So to answer your question, no, we're not using that. Hopefully we can use it in the future. But I think it's a great idea that you brought it up because there are several software that enables it to happen. You can actually do it through Ansible if I'm not mistaken. You can have several build configurations that and automate the detecting if the build configuration is succeeded in Ansible and then upload the config on your production server. So yeah, that's a good question. Any more? Okay, ilan pa po ba? Last one. Can I pick him? Okay, sorry. You can ask me later.
Hi. So you've mentioned that you're using microservices in your web apps, in your web services. What's the structure? What are the dependencies?
Okay. Okay, so I think I get your point. So actually, I've written a small article about how we refactored all our codes. It's quite tedious to do that. And the main reason is that we want to implement it as microservices, and we want it to be as disjoint as possible. So, for example, there are certain aspects in our code. For example, we're all familiar with the model view controller, right? So, since we're highly data dependent, and some of the models are being reused all again in the code, and then you need to copy paste and all those stuff. So what we tend to do is we have like our API service for our mobile, and then we have our backend service for our web app, and they all use the same models library. So we extracted every bit of code that we can separate. So if we can pull out a certain part of the code and then reuse it, we just put it in a separate repository file like PyPy, or we run it in a separate microservice. So we just need to access those in the different systems that we're deploying. So first is you need to refactor, and then once you refactor, you need to be able to identify which microservices to deploy independently, and then they can communicate to each other. So if you want the full implementation of microservices, you can use gRPC, I think, for Python. Remote protocol. I forgot the entire name, but you can use gRPC. So if you want full microservice implementation. So is that okay?
Have you done event-driven?
Wait, our code base is too big. Lambda, yes. I think we have several Lambda functions deployed in production. These Lambda functions are some of them are event triggered, and then when the event is triggered, the Lambda function will call some service or something. So yeah, basically we're using aus Lambda for microservices, and it's also written in Python. They also support they already support 3.6 now, so go for Lambda. So yeah, we're using Lambda for event triggered. Okay.